I think I'll go ahead and call the meeting to order of the National Heritage Area Management Plan Advisory Committee. My name's Eric Vink. I head up the staff at the Delta Protection Commission, and I chair this committee. And if I could, let me just read through the committee members who have joined, and then I don't think I've missed anyone yet, but if I have by that point, you all can jump in. We have Vice Chair Elizabeth Patterson from Benicia, Lenora Clark from Discovery Bay, Paulette Henham from Cortland, Douglas Shaw from Locke, Carol Jensen from Brentwood, Janet Lake from Freeport, James Motlow from Locke, David Stewart from Sacramento, Jan Vick from Rio Vista, and Jean Yokotove from Ileton. And in addition, we have ex officio members Michael Moran from East Bay Regional Park District and Trevor Rice from the National Park Service. And I see that Shelley from the Sacramento San Joaquin Delta Conservancy is joining us, probably instead of in the place of Campbell Ingram. So we welcome Shelley, and Mike Campbell has just joined the meeting as well. He's a member of the committee. Have I missed anyone in the introduction of the committee members? Okay. And then in addition, we have Blake Roberts from the Delta Protection Commission, Katie Metro from California State Parks, Carolyn Brackett and Augie Carlino from Point Heritage Development. They're all part of the team working behind the scenes to pull this together. And with that, unless we had anyone else joining, my coworker Natasha Nelson has joined, and we have a few members of the public, including Bill Wells and Claire Cooey and Shelby Spencer and Amanda Blossers from State Parks. So unless there are any other introductions, why don't we jump right into the first agenda item, which is an opportunity for members of the public to speak on items that are not on the agenda. Is there any public comment that anyone would like to offer on items not on the agenda? And then from there, we'll go to updates from the committee members. Okay, we're a fairly informal group. So if you wish to comment on something as we move our way through our agenda, please feel free to do so. But if there is no public comment specifically on items not on the agenda, we'll move to agenda item 3, which is National Heritage Area Advisory Committee member updates. Are there any updates from committee members?
Hello, Eric. It's Mike.
Hi, Mike. Please proceed.
I have 2 items. One is something that the Delta Regional Foundation has been working on. The foundation, which Eric and I both belong to, is the sponsor of the Delta Leadership Program and other activities within the Delta. We have now started something we're calling Delta Champions, and it's going to be an award ceremony. There are 5 categories, including lifetime contributions to the Delta preservation, both historical and environmental, Delta promotion. And that can now be found, that's went live today, can be found on the Delta Regional Foundation website. And there'll be more.
Yeah, I'm sorry, Mike, almost live. It will be live beginning tomorrow. Okay,
stay tuned. And the other is an update on our Clarksburg Schoolhouse, 1883 Schoolhouse project. We now have all the funds to build block walls, 13-foot block walls on the new foundation that was poured mid-year. And we'll be able to, hopefully by early January, mid-January, settle the school down onto the block walls. So that will stabilize it. And we recently received a grant to purchase the land that the school sits on. So we're working through the contract right now, but it's been approved. So it's great news for the schoolhouse.
Thank you, Mike. Those are good updates. Can I just append to your announcement regarding the Delta Champions? And I was looking for the date when those will be awarded, but there will be a dinner in the Delta in March of 2022. And I don't know if it is March 18th or March 25th. It's one of those two dates. Apologies, but that's where the Delta Champions will be acknowledged. And if I had the exact date, I would ask you to put it all on your calendars, but we'll report back on that the next time we meet.
And that all of this information is going to go out on your weekly newsletter. Is that correct?
Yeah, it'll be part of Delta Happenings, the weekly email blast from the Delta Protection Commission next week. Okay, well, thank you, Mike. Are there any other committee member announcements or updates? Paulette, I'm sorry, I didn't see your hand raised. Please proceed.
That's okay. I am, it's a little self-serving, but I'm really thrilled to announce the opening of Let's Face It Beauty, the first new business in Cortland in decades. And my daughter is opening it up in the old Ramos Oil building. It will be, the grand opening will be the 18th of December. So I encourage you all to stop by.
That's wonderful, Paulette. What type of business is it? I didn't quite catch it from the title.
It's an esthetician business. You can get all your waxing and facial needs met, Derek.
Wonderful. I'm sure I could use some. Well, thank you. That's great.
He's
news,
been
Paulette.
wondering where to go.
I like to keep it local. So
Now you know.
Wonderful. Well, thank you for that announcement.
Good. Way to go.
David Stewart.
Let me make sure I got my video on, or my, yeah, I'm not muted.
Yeah, you sound great.
I had a wonderful meeting with Herbert. He goes by Lou Griffin, who's the executive director for cultural preservation, and with Steve Hutchison, who's the tribal preservation officer for the Wilton Rancheria Miwok group. It was a great meeting, a lot about sources that I've used for some of the publications I've done in Soundings Magazine and shared with this committee and the working groups. I encourage them to continue to follow this project and to be involved, and emphasized how this group and this effort really values the Native communities and their input and involvement. So I think it was a very positive meeting, hopefully built some rapport and trust.
That's great. A great report, David. Thank you for that. And let me also acknowledge committee member Matt Holmes, who joined us. Welcome, Matt. Are there any other committee member announcements or updates? Okay, well then let's move to
Eric,
agenda.
I'm sorry,
Yeah.
Eric, can you see my hand?
Two-step kids.
No, I'm sorry.
It's,
Go ahead, Elizabeth.
thanks. So I'm going to be Debbie Downer with news. I've talked before about the Lincoln commissioned Civil War era officers' quarters and two other major structures that are on the National Heritage, National Historic Landmark listing as a historic district. So it's both the structures as well as the land. And unfortunately, thanks to SB 35, which requires no CEQA analysis and does not recognize standards on the National Historic Landmark list, because it's not a structure issue, it's a land issue, where it was a parade ground for the soldiers. So the application has been submitted, and this will allow development without CEQA, without mitigation for the loss of the site, and probably removal from the historic listing. I've been working through Congressman Thompson's office, Congressman Thompson's office. And I'm laughing because I worked for him when he was state senator, and then I always call him senator. But they're limited because of ethics and things like that. They did contact the National Park Service in DC, and to date we have no avenue to pursue other than legal. And so we'll probably be doing that. And when I say we, it's a group that's been involved in protecting the Presidio for generation. So as I said, I'm sorry to be Debbie Downer, but.
Yeah, well, I'm sorry to hear that too, Elizabeth, but thanks for keeping the group updated on that effort. I know it's something that you've mentioned in the past. Yeah,
it's a significant aspect for the heritage area because there is no other place in California, let alone the United States, that has a Lincoln Commission Presidio.
Yeah. Well, thank you. And by the way, Congressman Thompson probably loves it when you call him Senator Thompson.
He does. That's why I keep calling him Senator Thompson.
Okay, Matt, you have your hand raised. Matt Holmes.
Yeah, sorry, I forgot to be ready with my announcement, but I wanted to let folks know that there's an important meeting on the 7th at the State Water Resources Control Board, where there's a lot of important things being discussed. But above all, you can comment on the Bay Delta plan and this sort of delay for voluntary reductions. We can't save this heritage area if we keep letting them drain it. So if anybody really wants to jump in and speak up about increasing flows from the Sacramento and helping to clean this water out so we can actually use this amazing piece of infrastructure, show up and let's talk to these state agencies. Can I do that on these calls, Eric? Is that okay? Okay.
Yeah, no, that's fine to mention. It's a little a little bit straying from heritage, but we open it up to committee members. So thank you.
I thought under the auspices of trying to get people to develop recreation and tourism out here, both those things like clean water.
Yeah. Okay, thanks for that. And Douglas Shaw.
Yeah, just to mention that the last SEC meeting will be held on December 8th. Yeah, that will be the last SEC, the stakeholder engagement meeting.
Yeah, and again, for everyone, the Stakeholder Engagement Committee advises the Delta Conveyance Design Authority, the folks that are doing the engineering and design for the Delta tunnels. Not that they're in favor of the Delta tunnels, because there probably aren't any members of that committee who are, but it's an attempt to get community input, and I think it's been a good thing, and that effort will be concluding with that meeting on December 8th. Thank you for announcing that, Douglas. Any other announcements? Oh, Douglas, is there an air date yet for that TV show that was filmed in Locke?
I haven't heard about it. I haven't heard about it. Yeah.
Well, let us know when you hear, because we want to be able to watch it.
Yes,
Great.
okay, we will.
Thank you. Okay, any other member updates? All right, we'll move on to agenda item 4, which is an update on the National Heritage Area Heritage Adventures, and I'll turn it over to Blake.
Thank you, Eric. Some of you who have been involved in the Heritage Forum earlier, well, I guess it's now December, so I guess last month, and were involved in the forum last year as well, would probably recognize that one of the things that we've been attempting to do is to work on what we're calling adventures, but they're driving, walking, bicycling tours of the area. And we're part of the reason why we wanted to kind of do this is that this provides a way for people to get to know the NHA. And even though we're still working on the management plan, we really feel like this is an important early action project for us to take, something that will allow people to visit the area and really be able to explore a little bit. So I wanted to give you a little bit of a kind of a context for the work that we've been doing so far, the work that we're hoping to do, and then kind of let you know where there might be opportunities for assistance as we go along with this. So just a moment, I'm going to share my screen. Can everybody see that?
Yes.
Okay, great. So one of the things I wanted to do is to kind of talk about sort of the types of adventures that we've been discussing. Probably the one that's probably most relevant right now is going to be these overview driving adventures. And I'll talk a little bit more about sort of what the purpose of these adventures are. But really, that will be sort of our entry point into doing this type of work. Then we'll move on to popular topical adventures. This is something that we've been discussing a little bit before with Asian and Pacific Islander heritage, but I think there's some other topics that are really interesting to people and will probably get a lot of people to come to the NHA. Then we also have bicycling and walking adventures. A lot of the work that's been done so far has been on the local level, but perhaps one of the things that we can do is sort of facilitate some of the work that's been going on the local level. I wanted to put in water adventures because this is something that's been discussed a little bit already, and one of the things that's been recommended. But I think at this point, I think water adventures is something that at least at this point, I don't want to talk too much about, simply because I am not a boater by, I do not own a boat. And so I don't necessarily feel like I'm qualified to be giving boating tours when I don't necessarily know the area all that well. But I think this is something that obviously is important to a lot of people. There's a lot of people that get to know the area through boating, both motorized and non-motorized. So I wanted to make sure that was on the list, that it's in it's something that we are interested in doing. But I want to make sure that we have people out there that we can work with and can assist us in sort of moving forward with some ideas. I know that we've also been, as part of the Delta Trail Master Plan, one of the things that's been discussed is a water trail as well. So I think obviously there's going to be some interaction between these water adventures and then parts of the water trail as well. And then lastly, I just wanted to mention kind of niche topical adventures. I'll give you a sense of what those are a little bit later on. So the first thing I wanted to talk about were these overview driving adventures. And basically what we've been discussing so far is perhaps having 4 different ideas of 4 different adventures throughout the area, just based on, we want to make sure that these are short enough that people don't feel overwhelmed when they come to the area. And we also want to make sure that we are giving people enough time to visit the places they want to see. And so that's the reason why we kind of came up with this idea of 4 different adventures. There's Carquinez Strait, there's the West Delta, which is East Contra Costa County, the North Delta, which is the communities along the Sacramento River, and then the South and East Delta, which is San Joaquin County, and perhaps part of East Contra Costa County as well. And so what's the audience? We're really looking at people that are visiting for the first time. Maybe it's going to be the only time visiting the area, or people that are new to the area, sort of want to get a sort of sense of what is there, and so that will kind of help them get to know the area, and then they can explore certain areas in a little bit more detail. And really, the idea behind this is that a lot of people aren't quite sure what there is to see, and so this tour will sort of help them. These adventures will sort of help them kind of figure out what things they might want to visit more, or things that want to explore a little bit more. In terms of this is the highest priority item at this point, because these are things that we want to be able to unveil sooner rather than later. So we've already been working on some of these ideas. I mentioned that, and here the timeline right now is kind of from now through the probably late spring. And really, one of the things that we want to be able to do with this is sort of provide, I guess in the computer world, it would be a beta testing with the idea that we want to be able to unveil kind of ideas of adventures, but recognize that, you know, we're still looking for a lot of input on certain parts of the adventure. We don't want to make it look like, you know, we've unveiled something and that's stuck in concrete. So instead, what we're looking for is to sort of unveil these ideas and then work with different groups in order to kind of refine them a little bit and find something that's going to work. So I'm going to give you, obviously there's a lot of NHAs that do this kind of work as well. And so one of the things I want to make sure to do is to provide you examples of the sort of these sort of things in other national heritage areas. So this is the Blue Ridge National Heritage Area, and part of the NHA has the Great Smoky Mountains National Park. And so, you know, this is a driving tour that sort of helps you get through the Smokies and sort of gives you sort of a sense of what is in the Smoky Mountains. And so I think one of the things that we would probably be doing once we have a finalized version of this is that we probably want to put it on websites, and we want to feature it very prominently on websites such as Visit CA Delta, right? Visit CA Delta. Also, another thing that we wanted to be able to do was to have paper, hard copy versions of this as well. So this is from Cane River National Heritage Area, which is in Louisiana. This is actually a brochure that the NHA printed out with the idea that this would allow you to take different journeys through the area. So I could see us doing a very similar sort of hard copy map, perhaps ones that we could include at visitor centers or at hotels that might where they have those kind of tourism racks. And so that would be the idea of this. So this is the first page of it, and then I wanted to show you the second, which sort of gets into sort of the different trails that they are showing. So on the first side, you see sort of the map and what is going on, where everything is in relation to each other. But then it's on this second page that you get a little bit more detail about each site, and you are able to kind of feel a little bit more involved in what's going on. So I cut this off a little bit in order to make sure it was readable for people. But one of the things I will do is I'll provide email. I will provide web links for these things so people can see them and interact with them in person. So first, I wanted to sort of give you a sense of what this might look like. I selected the North Delta because in terms of my work in the Delta, it's probably the area that I'm most familiar with. And so, you know, while I have been working on the other adventures, I wanted to be clear that this is probably the one that might be a little bit closer to ready for prime time, although it still might be a little, it might be a little bit before then. But I wanted I felt more comfortable presenting this as opposed to some of the other adventures, especially those areas where, especially the Carquinez Strait, where I'm just not as familiar. And so one of the things that we would do in this instance is we would sort of have what I would consider a loop, perhaps, through the area. So people could start driving through the loop on at any location that they want. It's sort of wherever they are, then they can start this loop. So because you probably have a lot of people there that might be coming from the Sacramento area, I started this particular adventure in West Sacramento on the waterfront, then heading down along the river to Freeport, to Hood, and to Stone Lakes National Wildlife Refuge, to Cortland, Locke, and Walnut Grove, Staten Island, which a lot of people were mentioning was, you know, really important wildlife location, then to Ileton, Rio Vista, And then heading on the way back up on the west side of the river is to ride in Grand Island Mansion and Clarksburg, and then finally returning to West Sacramento. So just to give you a sense of what this would look like on a map, one of the things that I think we were sort of debating how to handle this. In a lot of, in some of the instances I saw national heritage areas, they provided sites, but they didn't necessarily provide a specific driving, like a specific driving path. And so one of the questions that we will have going forward is, do we want to specify which roads we want them to take? And obviously, part of the reason why we might want to be a little bit more specific about that is obviously a lot of times when you look up things on Google Maps, it'll take you on Interstate 5 through this particular area. And that is not necessarily the most scenic route, and it doesn't really give you a sense of what the area is like. And so in this instance, I provided a little bit more specific route just to kind of give people a sense of what places they might want to, where they might want to drive, and also to provide them a little bit of, there's a little bit of diversity in terms of the places they're visiting. They're not just on 160, they're getting off of 160 and visiting other areas. So I wanted to give this as an example of what this might look like. And at least from here, once we have given this to the committee to look at and to other people that might be interested in looking at this, then we can sort of refine it from here. Obviously, there might be some questions about, well, what's the quality of the road in this particular place, or is this going to be a spot where it's going to be there's going to be a lot of traffic? And so those are questions that we can work with a little bit more as we go along through this process. Is there any questions before I move on? Okay. So the next thing I wanted to talk about is the popular topical adventures, and these are things that we expect that people will be really interested in doing. The first one we have up there is an agricultural trail and adventure, and obviously there's a lot of farm trails. There's a lot of farm trails that are out there, and we had Sacramento River Delta Grown. That was a very active organization. Unfortunately, they are at this point not working anymore, or they're sort of on hiatus right now. And so this might provide us an opportunity to kind of provide an adventure that allows people to visit different places that might have agritourism, or there might be other aspects of agriculture that we want them to check out. Asian Pacific Islander, obviously there's a lot of Asian Pacific Islander heritage resources. Each town has some history in terms of Chinese, Japanese, Filipino, Sikh history, and so we want to make sure that those are public and are places that people would be able to visit. Then we also have family fun, and this is really more of an idea of trying to reach out to those places that might be a little bit more interesting for families, and kind of depending on the age of children would be one of the factors that we might want to consider. Indigenous, this would be something that we would work on with local tribes, with the idea of being able to give people a sense of what the area was like, for what the area is, the significance of it now for a lot of tribes, and then also what sort of historical significance for a lot of the indigenous people of the area. Natural resources, obviously there's a lot of great wildlife to look at. There's a lot of great areas to see that sort of give you a sense of what the Delta and the Carquinez Strait are all about. And then finally, recreation, and obviously that can mean a lot of different things to different people, but I think there's a lot of opportunity to show people the diversity of recreational resources that there is. So obviously this would, be more aimed at people with kids or an interest in particular themes. It would be medium and high priority. And we're looking at probably starting, work on some of these themes later in maybe February or March of next year. With the idea that, we already have a group that we've put together that's called the Delta Asian and Pacific Islander Heritage Advisory Committee. They've been sort of discussing potential adventures before, and so I think it's more of a matter of sort of going from the talking to actually putting something together. So here's an example from Motor Cities, which is around Detroit. This is a tour that specifically talks about the life of Henry Ford and sort of places that you could visit dealing with Henry Ford. Obviously, Henry Ford is a pretty big name in Detroit and in the importance of Detroit to the car industry. And so I think this would probably be sort of a tour that might reach a little bit larger audience. And so what they have done is they have provided the spots you see on the map are places that sort of illustrate the history of Henry Ford throughout the area. And down below, you can see where there's a little bit more detail about each one of those stops. So then we also have bicycling and walking adventures, and there's probably no end of places that we might be able to explore a little bit more through bicycling and walking. And so in terms of specific adventure ideas, it's not limitless, but there's more here than we can put down on one page very easily. And so I think there's a lot of options in terms of what people might want to walk and drive through, walk and bicycle through. So the audience for this would be people that want to see the area a little bit more in detail and would like to sort of walk around the community and see what's there. In terms of priority, this is sort of depends. Obviously, there's going to be some of these walking tours that are already ready or are pretty far along. Then there might be other areas that will take a while to happen. So I think those are important things to think about is, what areas do we want to highlight in a little bit more detail. So this is an example from our own area, which is the downtown Benicia walking tour. And so this definitely is something that's already happened. And so it gives people a sense of what the history of the area. They can explore certain buildings along the route. And there's some explanation about what its significance is for the area. And then on this, obviously on the second page of this, you can actually see the map and how it relates, one place relates to another. Finally, I wanted to kind of talk about these sort of niche topical adventures. And there's probably, like I said before, and like I said with bicycling and walking tours, there's probably no limit on the sort of adventure ideas you might be able to have. The ones that are listed down here are ones that have been mentioned before, and so that's the reason why I put them on the list. And so, I think there might be a lot of appeal especially for specific groups that might want to have information about it. Gearhead would sort of get out some of the importance of the Delta and the Carquinez Strait in terms of engineering and land, the agricultural technology that was developed in the area. And so, that might kind of reach at a little bit more segmented group. One of the things I did want to mention on here is the ghost tours. Ghost tours are very popular, but obviously there's the historical accuracy of them might be a little limited. But so I think one of the things that we have to sort of weigh is how much is it worth trying to get people into the area to kind of do a fun tour, even if, you know, in terms of the historical reality, it might be a little loose. But, you know, obviously we want to get people in the area and we want to be able to have people visit. But at the same time, we don't want to trivialize, you know, the things that have happened in people's lives. And so in terms of priority, this is probably a little over the map, all over the map, but probably more low and medium. So we're looking at late of next year through 2024, developing different ideas. In terms of where we would present this information, probably some of this might be on our website. Some of it might be through specific articles in magazines, or one of the options might be a blog, which kind of is more dealing with current, what's going on currently. So I'll give you an example of something that was a blog. This is in North Carolina. Obviously, one of the things that is really an exciting thing about, particularly on the East Coast and Northeast, is sort of these tours that go through areas to see the change in the fall foliage. And so this particular blog was specifically focused on getting people into areas where they could explore the autumn's beauty, as they put it here, a little bit more. And so that is really, you know, it's more going to be a seasonal thing. It's not necessarily something that's going to be happening all the time. So that's why I'm saying it would probably need to be a little bit more targeted in terms of who we're going to be talking to. So with that, does anybody have any questions or anything that they wanted to discuss?
Thank you, Blake. Any, maybe you can.
Yeah, I see
Lenora.
Lenora. Yeah. I'll go with Lenora first, and then Bill.
Good afternoon, and your presentation was really interesting. And I was wondering, had you given any thought to placing the information on an app?
Yes, that is one of the things that I didn't mention specifically, but and part of the reason why I didn't mention it specifically is because, you know, I don't necessarily know where we are with developing a mobile app and how soon that might happen. But I would anticipate that if we did have a mobile app and when that's developed, we would have these adventures on there.
Great, thank you.
Thanks, Lenora. Let's go with Bill, Mike, and Janet. And Blake, if you could stop sharing your screen so we can.
Oh, sure. Sorry about that.
No, that's okay. Go ahead.
Okay. Thank you very much, Blake. Good presentation. On your original tour of the North Delta, one of the critical things that we get calls about are the 2 ferry boats up there, and I see the tour doesn't include them. I would strongly suggest it.
Yeah. That's a really a pertinent point, and I appreciate that.
Sure.
And I know that there has been issues with the regularity of the ferries. So I don't know if that's something we need to.
Yeah. Well, they're controlled by Caltrans, so we need to get Caltrans to get the problem straightened out. They used to be reliable, so I'm confident they can be reliable again. It's that because there's a problem doesn't mean avoid it. It means like solve the problem, as far as I'm concerned. But that's, I mean, I'm telling you from my answering the phone for the Delta Chamber 7 days a week, 24 hours a day for the last 15 years, we get a lot of calls of people wanting to know about the ferry boats, how much the ride costs, where they go to. We also get a lot of calls about Foster's Bighorn and Rio Vista and the town of Locke. So if I could suggest, I would concentrate on those places and get some more input from local people that actually, you know, deal with this stuff on a daily basis.
Right. And that's the reason why we wanted to sort of unveil it in sort of this way where we're able to get, get input from locals as opposed to just being, obviously this is not something we want to just release without a significant input.
Sure. Anyway,
and mentioning the ferries is a good point. I'm glad you brought that up.
Great, thank you, Bill. Mike, then Janet, then Jen.
Yes, Blake, two things. One would be reclamation districts or the reclamation of the Delta as is an important story. And the other is, and it probably pertains to audio, or it does pertain to audio, as you drive around, if there's special areas, special buildings, objects, that you could get the audio off your car radio.
Thanks
And-
for bringing that up. And I did want to mention that Isleton currently has a phone tour that they have of Main Street. And I don't know, Eric, if you have any more information about this, but there is a mobile app called Here. I can never remember. There's HEAR and then HERE, and I can't remember which one's which.
Yeah.
But Here is an app that sort of focuses on telling stories of certain areas, and they do have audio, sort of an audio tour of certain spots. And we did do some. We were working with a group earlier to provide some content for that.
Yeah, I just don't know if they've yet produced those segments, but I know they had intentions to, so there would at least be some Delta specific stories there. But yeah, thank you, Blake.
And once that's released, it is a pay service, but I think you can get a free trial, hopefully. And once those are released, we can give people information about that.
Thank you, Mike. Janet, and then Jan.
Hi, yeah, the National Park Service, in fact, when I was in Mesa Verde, has an app that you can download at their visitor center because there's no internet throughout. And they do give you an audio tour. So maybe the National Park Service can help out with some of that. The other thing I just want to bring up, and I think I've brought it before, is the traffic on the driving tours. Yeah. And it's kind of, again, like the elephant in the room that, you know, traffic does have to get kind of straightened out, and it's getting worse out there, right? And it's actually kind of dangerous. And I'm not saying not do it. I'm just saying I think it just something needs to get figured out on that. And then the other issue is especially with the ghost tours and all these other recreational ones, right? Accommodations. There needs to be, it would seem to me, there needs to be more accommodations. And so it's kind of a catch-22. Just want to bring that to light.
Yeah, you know, Janet, we've talked about the traffic thing. I might be a contrarian. I think the more slow people you can put on our Delta roads, the better it will be. Number one, for the people who are in the Delta who drive too fast, and there are those people. But number two, for the people who drive through the Delta and use it as an adjunct to Interstate 5 or 80 or 580. And nothing better than to get those people behind a 40-mile-per-hour driving tourist interested in taking in all the beauty.
Yeah,
so.
Yeah. I would agree with that. In fact, the traffic through Freeport, we've got people going through here 80, 90 miles an hour.
Yeah,
and so
it's really unbelievable.
Yeah, and I you know, I've talked to Caltrans about that, okay, and it's fallen on deaf ears. And I think, you know, there needs to be either more enforcement or something. Maybe it's something as simple as that. I don't know.
Well, you can talk to your local officials. It's hard if it's out in the rural area, but if it's through town, Walnut Grove's had success at putting street what the hell are those things called? Traffic tables or speed tables, or they're not exactly speed bumps, but you have to slow down. And you know, truthfully, anything that can get people to slow down, especially where you have, you know, people pulling in and out of businesses and people living in concentration. Anyway, I'd encourage anyone who has that problem to work with your local official, your county supervisor, and see if you can get a solution similar to what they accomplished in Walnut Grove with the speed table.
So I have brought that up to the county supervisors and I mean, had them all at a meeting, okay? And the problem is this going through Freeport, it's a highway, okay? So they don't really want to do speed bumps, and plus the type of speed bumps because of motorcycles, right, or speed tables. And so they did put those temporary ones out. And then as far as they say they have to do that to give tickets, they have to do a survey. And they said if they did a survey, actually, it would probably show, instead of 35 that it shows, it would probably be like 50 or 60, right? And so that it would do us no good whatsoever. Yeah, I mean, so I have done that right through here, and it doesn't seem to be, I don't know what the solution is. Somebody else needs to step in. And
Yeah, well, thank you, Janet. Maybe we can take that one offline as well and see if we can make some improvements there. Jan, then Trevor, then David, then Elizabeth.
I'd like I'd like to start out with a comment on the ferries. There's several problems with the ferries. Number one, they can't get enough captains. So the ferries are often closed, but they're closed with not much notice. And at most they're only open 12 hours a day. So it's not like it used to be where you could, and I used to do this going home from work, where you can go down and take a nice trip across the two ferries and they were always there. The second issue is the real McCoy 2 is not reliable and it's frequently broken down. So that's the issue with the ferries, and I'd kind of stay away from that. But that's just kind of an aside. What I'd like to mention is, first, Rio Vision here in Rio Vista publishes a magazine called Discover Rio Vista, which truly is not just Rio Vista, it's the Delta. And I think it would be really good. I will try to forward some of the articles. For instance, the next issue will carry article, and the one following will too, or actually in the fall it will, on birding in the winter. January is a little late, but there's still a lot that can be done. And and then Phil Pizzalia has, I think, is going to put out a new book on a walking tour of Rio Vista, the historic homes in Rio Vista, because he does an article every month and has for several years. So this is a really great resource. It is distributed free, and it's distributed to businesses throughout the Delta. And it's really a good resource because it's got a wide variety. We do wineries, we do everything. So basically, I just wanted to bring that to your attention because I think it would be very helpful in doing some of the things that Blake was talking about. And I will send information to him on the side.
Great.
That's great. Thank you, Jan. Yeah, and that's great to hear about Phil's new book as well. He's a real champion of the greater Rio Vista area. Trevor and David.
He's got a book on the Delta towns.
Mm-hmm.
That it's mostly photographs, old photographs, but he gives a lot of the history, and it's really excellent.
Yeah, I agree with you on that. Thank you. Trevor, then David, then Elizabeth.
Thanks. I just wanted to mention on Janet's point, we were thinking right along the same line. I was actually searching the app to see if any other national heritage areas were on the NPS application. Unfortunately, I didn't find any. So I've reached out to a colleague of mine who works with our regional and national teams to determine if it's a possibility to add the NHAs to the National Park Service app. And hopefully I can get an answer and forward that on to Blake and the other folks. I also just wanted to mention, Blake, I know you said specific to the walking and cycling tours, and I wanted to highlight that I do think it's important, having recently listened in on a number of the Delta Trail presentations, that I think they've already laid a lot of the groundwork there, particularly with their work around the adventure hubs portion of the Delta Trail. I think they've already got some good starting points there. So that sounds great. I would make a recommendation or a push to say, while I agree, starting with overview tours of the Delta is a good idea. You need to start somewhere, and that's a great place. Recognizing that, you know, a lot of the visitors, especially who are coming from the larger metro areas around, may not have easy access to vehicles. And so it's important to make sure that we're providing tours that are open to them as well. So, you know, maybe there's a way that we can look at prioritizing similar, you know, places that could show high quality Delta resources that are available for walking and cycling tours, but particularly those that are accessible by public transit.
Great, thank you, Trevor. And that's great. Thank you for checking with your NPS colleagues, because that would be wonderful if the NHAs could get included there. David and then Elizabeth.
Two quick comments. One is it really relates especially to the gearhead category. Just to remind everybody that the San Joaquin County Historical Museum, where I used to be director, has world-class exhibits on agricultural technology, including asparagus and Delta crops, including asparagus and canning tomatoes or processing tomatoes. And probably one of the best collections of Caterpillar and other earth moving equipment in the nation, and developed specifically to meet the challenges of agriculture in the Delta. Secondly, in terms of some of the existing tours, shifting gears to my more recent kind of interim job with the Sacramento History Museum, there's some great, not only guided tours, which the museum does of old Sacramento, but they have some self-guiding tours that are incredible. One is an app that's called Anytime Tours of Sacramento that has videos at specific stops, and you can pick your own route, but at these stops, they actually have some of their costumed interpreters playing characters, historic characters. They're really entertaining, kind of edgy in some cases, really fun, brief videos. So there are resources out there that could be just pulled together that could be utilized at all these different spots. So those are just two I wanted to bring up.
Thank you, Dave.
Thanks, David. Elizabeth.
So yay, Eric, about your comment about speeding. And yes, it is a problem. It's a state statute. I think it's a vehicle code that you have to measure the quote average speed. And so when they're speeding, it actually raises the speed. The only way to get around that is a school district. So we need to work on getting things amended, because the fatalities are increasing by significant amounts because of the speeding that's increased. So this is a particular issue for this region, but it's also throughout the state. I've had people pass me on the shoulder on the right-hand lane. I know. What I really wanted to cover, however, is a couple of thoughts. One is, and I kind of gave some very brief, but not particularly helpful, in-depth ideas to Blake, and that is some of the water development projects. So if you take Barker Slough, and that's within the tour area, and connect that to some of the structures in the Delta, there are people who care about water development, and it could be a really interesting tour. And then they begin to understand that the diversion starts above the Delta, right across the river. And so that might be helpful. Not that we want to get too political, but I just thought that would be helpful. And I did that, and I discovered yellow county has a fabulous, I didn't even know this existed, a fabulous military converted conservation trail area. And it's great for walking dogs, by the way, but it's also fabulous for bird watching. And who knew that there's almost no structures within view. So it's really helpful. And so those are some of the things that Blake was sort of suggesting that we need to spend more time on developing. And I'd be happy to continue working with you guys on that offline. And then speaking of which we need to develop further, I feel like I should represent Vallejo because it is in the area and it is an amazing resource. People who haven't been there would be blown away with the kind of facility that this is and was. All the way from the docks, which are now back in service, and there's significant docks where submarines were, but also in some of the historic buildings. And then there's the marshland. And so maybe again, offline, we could think about how do we fit that in? Because it's obviously way too much to include in the whole Carquinez Strait. So we need to divide that up a little bit. Somebody said something and I forgot, I didn't write the name down, but I sort of wanted to build on the suggestion that Benicia has a for free Benicia magazine that goes to every address in Benicia. Maybe we could, speaking of accommodations and what have you, that's what the State Parks and Recreation identified the significance of Benicia for the Delta is that it does have accommodations. Maybe there could be a partnership with the Benicia magazine, maybe even modifying its title slightly. And then also having the business folks support the placement of the tours as it relates to the accommodations. And then and then also for that tour that Blake was showing on the walk in Benicia, it does not include the arsenal. For a long story, which I won't go into, but on that tour are QR postings. So that's really cool. You can walk up to a sign that's marking a historic building that may not exist or has been repurposed, and then you just use your QR and it's updated on a regular basis. And let me see, lastly, the fellow from Hercules, I don't know if he signed on today, but I thought what he had to say about the military aspect about this whole area, that we probably want to put that on the list and then develop that as it comes along, because that brings in a very strong tie with Vallejo and Benicia. And then, I guess the other thing I wanted to note, I'm not a big fan of Airbnb, speaking as a local government person. However, Airbnb does offer ideas about tours. And so you can book those when you book with Airbnb, you can actually book a docent-led tour. So I would suggest that we put that on the list to pursue.
Yeah, and actually, thank you, Elizabeth. And Augie had a good comment in the chat, which was the app. I think that goes back to Mike Campbell's comment early on that, guides people through the Delta. That could be a recommendation to include in the management plan. So something for you all to consider in terms of, what you would like to see included in the management plan. David, back to you.
Thanks. I just piggybacking on Elizabeth's comment about military, and I think there's a real possibility that could be a very interesting theme. And I'd point out that the port of Stockton is huge in terms of World War II, and the shipbuilding. There were 10,000 employees at shipbuilders during World War II just on the Stockton main channel there. And there's a group restoring a wooden minesweeper, the Lucid, in Stockton there, and they're making great progress. And that could be a part of such a tour when that's complete.
Well, this is great. There's so many good examples of how to broaden this concept of tours that were included in all of your comments. And I hope Blake's been taking good notes. I know he'll have a recording of this meeting if he needs to go back and pick up some, but I didn't hear an idea that I didn't think was fantastic. So keep them coming, and I'm glad that we let off the heart of the meeting with this, because it's really a great way to tell stories of the region and a great way for people to access parts of the National Heritage Area. So keep your ideas coming to Blake. We should probably wrap this agenda item up, but Blake, is there anything else that you wanted to say at this point?
No, I will say that I will be following up with web links, and also Stacy Hayden, our public information officer, discovered a really great new website from Visit Sutter Yuba, and that really provides some great options in terms of trip ideas. And so I'll probably be sending those links on to you. I'll also probably be kind of forwarding you at least some of the planned trips, and then we can get some more feedback and refine them as we go along. So thank you so much. This has been great feedback.
Great. All right, well, thanks, Blake. Well, let's move on to agenda item number 5. This is a report on the Delta Heritage Forum, which was held on November 3rd. And Blake, do you want to kick it off, or you want to hand it off to your team members there?
Well, I think I'll just start out by saying that, you know, the forum, I think, was a really successful event, and there was a lot of variety and what we're able to provide, but they all kind of focused on, you know, what is the future of the NHA, and what can we do in terms of preparing the management plan. So, you know, I'll hand it off to Point HCC, but I think overall it was really a successful event, and I think you know, is a great way to sort of talk about some of the issues that we're going to face as we go forward. So Carolyn, do you want to?
Sure. Hi, everybody. It's been interesting listening to this conversation, because I'm seeing all the connections to a lot of the discussions that we had at the Delta Heritage Forum. So it's good to be seeing the links starting to happen. So the Delta Heritage Forum, what our team did was a session on the management plan itself. And I know a number of you were at that session. And then we also had some folks who were new to the process. So it was kind of an interesting mix of those who have been with us all along and those who were kind of jumping on this moving train. So to accommodate that, we started with just a brief overview of what is the management plan, why are we doing this? But then we spent the majority of the time talking about 4 action areas that are emerging, and that has been a result of the work of this committee and of the task groups and other outreach and work over the previous year to begin to see where are some categories that we're going to want to work in. So the 4 that we looked at, the first one was tourism development and promotion. So I think you can see from the conversation we just had that that's a big topic for the adventure tours and for a lot of other opportunities. Culture and living traditions was the second one, then recreation. And then the 4th, we put preservation and conservation in one under one umbrella, looking at both the built environment and natural resources. So what we tried to do in the discussions was talk about to get some feedback on should these be priority areas for the heritage area, if they should be, what should the role of the heritage area be, and then who should we think about as partners. I think for the forum, the feedback we mostly got was fairly general. We didn't, I don't feel like we really drilled down to specific answers to those questions. There were comments, I think, that we'll definitely want to take back to the chart, that matrix that we've shared with you all, and we've been building of areas that we want to look more closely at. One in particular being educational opportunities for school groups. There was some good conversation about that. And so we want to go back and look and make sure we've captured that in that chart. The Great Delta Trail, and of course there was a separate session about that, but I think everyone's in agreement that the Great Delta Trail and the National Heritage Area are like hand in a glove, that we need to be looking at that as a unified opportunity. So I think our outcome from that session is just we can see there's a real need to continue to educate people about what the heritage area is, what the opportunities are, and how they can be engaged going forward. So I think that's kind of what we came out of that session with. But Augie, do you want to share your observations on that session as well?
Yeah, I thought it was a good session. You know, I can see, at least from, you know, the time working with you all, the thoughts coming together in your minds as to what you all can work on and what you can do. You know, tourism, these are all parts of it, but they're not the limit of it. And oftentimes that's what people think about when they think only of a national heritage area. You can do so much more. And I think tonight's conversation even shine a light on other things that you could do that were tourism and beyond that. So, you know, nothing to add more than what you said, Carolyn. I thought it was a good discussion overall for the whole meeting that night in November.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I thought all the sessions were really good, and that Blake, the overview that you gave of the heritage area and that introductory session, I think really set the stage, particularly for people who haven't necessarily been engaged through the whole process or aren't on one of the committees. So I think that was good, and that people stayed, which is really good. Sometimes in a meeting, you know, online that goes on for several hours, you lose people, but I saw at the end we still had a good turnout. So I feel like that in itself says that the content was engaging and people really wanted to be a part of it. So hopefully next year it'll be able to be in person. We'll see what happens with that. But yeah, and then Katie, I'll turn it over to you if you want to talk about your session.
Thanks. I just got back from Virginia last night, so I was in your kind of neck of the woods, closer than I am now. Yes, we had a really good turnout. We had a lot of the same people we've seen before, but also some new faces and some really good outcomes from that meeting. We had some very good feedback from National Park Service, as well as East Bay Regional Parks. And also a couple of interested folks from, I believe, the Conservancy, the Delta Conservancy. I think Shelley's on this call. I got your email, and I'm going to be reaching out to you for your assistance. I appreciate it. So what that forum did for us was to really connect people to what we're working on, and then it helped promote a more in-depth discussion with national parks and also with East Bay Regional Parks on some of the work that we're doing in the interpretive plan. And so we had a really good follow-up discussion, and we have a good action plan on our next steps. And so right now we are working on that the interpretive framework, which is all of the themes and things that we've been talking about all along. And then we also launched an interpretive provider survey, which I'm going to post in the chat. if I can find it. I'll post it in a couple of minutes. I would love to see some of you folks who are part of this advisory committee, if you're part of an organization that does provide interpretive content, to take the survey. We had 5 responses from organizations, and then we have 2 specific sites. Site responses. So there's 2 different types. There's a one for like overall, what does your organization do? And then if you have a specific location, what does your location offer? So I would love to see some more responses to that. We're going to also follow up, which hopefully in the January, February, with some more targeted stakeholder meetings with some of those providers. So I'll go ahead and get those links and post it onto the chat, and you can forward it to other folks that you know who might be interested. Clarksburg Schoolhouse, Tanisha, and other organizations, Locke, and other organizations that you know should participate. Let's really develop our existing interpretive conditions. We really need to see what's out there so we know where our gaps are, so we can start finding out how to provide the recommendations on reaching, a full range of interests and users for the heritage area. So, any questions on that?
I don't see any hands, Katie, but thank you.
Okay.
Thanks to you, Carolyn and Blake. Go ahead, Blake.
Oh, I did want to mention that I have not had a chance to send out an email to all the participants, but our YouTube, the DPC YouTube website does have the videos of the sessions itself. The only thing that's missing from those are the breakout sessions during the adventures session. So anyway, I'll be sending out links to those recordings, so you can, if you didn't have a chance to see it the first time, or if you wanted to listen to it again, it's up there for your viewing.
Great, thanks, Blake. Okay, committee members, anything else on this item before we move on to our final agenda item for this meeting? Okay, and I do want to welcome Jeff Henderson from the Delta Stewardship Council, one of our ex officio members. Glad that you could join us here. Let's move on to agenda item 6, which is an update on the NHA advisory task groups. And I think Carolyn's going to kick this one off and then turn it over to Katie.
Yeah. So everybody will get a little bit of a break over the holidays, but after the first of the year, what we really want to do is move with the task groups toward beginning to get some specifics, working towards some specifics about what do you want to include in this management plan. So we'll convene the Heritage Development and Tourism Task Group and the Resource Stewardship Task Group again. In February, we'll be working on dates for those and get that out to everybody. In addition to what we've captured on that action matrix that we've shared with everyone, and just to be clear, that the intent of that is to do exactly that, capture what we've heard, what people have said, what their interest is, but none of that yet is translating into specific goals and strategies, and that's what we're moving toward. Some of the pieces that we're going to want to get more information, do more outreach to make sure that those are included as we're moving toward goals and strategies, incorporating the travel engagement, that input, stakeholder interviews that we'll be doing, reaching out in particular. For example, the tourism has come up so many times in so many different ways. We want to connect with the state tourism office, other stakeholders, We also will be continue working with Katie and her team, looking at how the interpretive themes and those actions are moving forward, so that we're bringing things together. So in a lot of ways, it looks like, we're doing this a piece at a time, but what it really should be pictured as is a puzzle that's all going to come together. So when we're looking at what do we want to do with tourism, we got to go back and look at what are the stories, what are the themes, what do we want to share with people when they come here. So those are the things that the task group, two task groups will be working on after the first of the year. And then, of course, the big question is the role of the National Heritage Area. And everyone in public meetings, task groups, the Delta Heritage Forum has shared lots of information on partners. There are lots of groups out there doing lots of great things. And so the question becomes, what's the role of the National Heritage Area? Leadership role, partner role, advocate, those others that we've shared in previous presentations. So, so that's what we'll be working on with those two task groups after the first of the year. But I guess before that, final task group, the organizational task group, will be convening in the near future. And so I wanted to ask Augie if you want to, Augie will be leading that task group to explain a little bit about what that group will be doing and how it fits with the rest of all the planning that we'll be doing.
Sure. Thank you, Carolyn. It's called a management plan for two reasons. One, as we talked about earlier tonight, all those things related to the different assets and opportunities, you all need to, with us, figure out what you're going to do and how that is going to enhance the communities you live in. But then there is sort of another layer to that. How do you manage all this, right? And management of a heritage area, you've heard us say this many times before, I'll say it again. Management of the heritage area is not just left to the coordinating entity, DPC. The management of the heritage area is left to the broader partnership, because you all are the heritage area. DPC is the coordinating entity. So what the organization task group works on, and we've started with you a little bit on this many meetings back when we began to kick around ideas of a vision statement. We'll take the recommendations that are coming out of all these task groups, and we'll start to look at how that sets the framework for what the organization's goals and core values are going to be, right? So what's the vision for the organization? What's the mission for the organization? And what basically is the values that the heritage area wants to accomplish over the next 10 years? What are you working toward? That becomes what the Park Service calls your foundation document, or your foundation statement, I should say. That leads into specifically and directly then what type of organization is going to coordinate. Now, we all know on the legislation that DPC is named as the coordinating entity. But within this management plan, we have to define roles. What is DPC specifically going to do? What are the partners going to do? How much are projects going to cost? Where might additional funding come from? Because Congress requires added funding to match the Park Service money that is allocated through an appropriation each year. All of that gets built into almost the business plan component of the management plan that defines and says who you're going to be, how you're going to work, what the partners are going to contribute in a sense of not necessarily money, but time and effort. Some partners could contribute money, and if so, we'll make sure we document that. But it isn't necessarily step up to the table to bring money. It's step up to the table, let's roll up our sleeves. And this is the task we have in front of it for the next 10 years, folks. How are we collectively going to manage this? There's a role for everybody to play in this. The organization task force, I think you've heard me say it again, it's not necessarily the sexiest thing or the most fun thing to work on. Defining the themes and doing the study of the history That's all always fun. All the organizations that I've worked with on heritage areas, that seems to get the most enthusiasm. But underlying all of this is, you know, this fundamental issue: who we are, what we are, and how are we going to structure ourselves to accomplish all this. And that's what the organization task force is going to do. So I know from Blake, you know, there's already the beginnings of, I guess, putting together some potential members of this. You know, I don't know who they are or what the steps are in doing that. But that group is going to be coming together fairly soon and beginning to work as these other task groups start to feed it information, and we'll begin to work on it. Next steps, though, immediately, finalizing the vision, working on the mission, and developing those core values. That, again, sets the framework for how we advance on all the projects and programs that you do. Questions anyone might have?
Well, Augie, I just want to mention that you're right. We are going to be reaching out to sort of complete the membership of the organizational task group. So, so hopefully we should be able to start meeting in early next year.
I am looking forward to it. It will be fun. You got a lot of opportunity.
Thank you. Elizabeth has her hand raised.
So, Augie, I know there are no dumb questions, but I think this might qualify. Is there...
Elizabeth, you've never heard me ask a question.
Would this, on the management, can you have more than one, quote, manager? So I'm thinking of the estuary and how that's managed. It's US EPA and the state. And there are advantages for that for obvious reasons, particularly because Benicia and Vallejo aren't in the Delta Protection Zone. And so anyway, I was just, as I said, you may have discussed this. This may have been part of the whole development of the legislation. I don't know. I'm just asking, is it feasible to have two partners, like co-managers of a heritage area?
That is an excellent question. And what you've asked is actually something that exists in other heritage areas. Those managers or coordinating entities, as the legislation defines them and the Park Service names them, they have to be named in the legislation. So DPC is the coordinating entity. If you added another manager or coordinator, that would require an act of Congress. Not saying it couldn't be done, but to give you an example, there are other places where it is dual coordination. First one that comes to mind, and probably the most successful and best run in that way, is the Ohio and Erie Canal corridor that stretches from Cleveland down to, I believe it's Ashtabula, Ohio, where their river system dumps out into the Ohio. That corridor is about maybe 150 miles, maybe 170 miles long. It is literally bifurcated in management. The northern part above Akron going into Cleveland is managed by one organization. The southern part from just above Akron down to the Ohio River is managed by another organization. They each have their own separate boards, and then they've got a hierarchy board that brings the two organizations together. They share the funding from the Park Service each year. I don't know how they do it, what they use to allocate the money to the projects in the area. But they've existed like that for at least 25 years now, and highly successful. And like I said, there are others. Now, when I say that, understand, because DPC is named as a coordinating entity, I'll stress that word, coordinating, because every asset that you're working with in the heritage area has its own management entity, right? There are nonprofits, there are state agencies, there are county agencies, there are other organizations. They all manage their asset And then the coordinating entity works with the whole partnership to bring that together to make it appear to the public as one unified collective effort. That's the fun part that Blake and others at DPC are going to have, right? Is how do you juggle all of that? I used to have hair when I started working with my heritage area. So you can see what that does to a person, right? But I've been doing it for 30 years and I love it every day. So does that answer your question, Elizabeth?
It does. I'm looking
Okay.
forward to working on various scenarios.
Good.
Great, thanks, Elizabeth. Are there any other questions of Augie or any of the other presenters on this agenda item?
Katie, did you want to take a chance to talk a little bit about the interpretive planning task group? I know you did on the last agenda item, but I just wanted to bring it up again.
Yeah, I just wanted to, let you guys know that we are continuing to work on the themes and try to drill them down and looking at really the presentation and make the themes more evocative and interesting. We've got some really fabulous feedback from East Bay. So thank you, Mike and Trevor, and also Linda from NPS. So you'll see a draft coming up probably in January with a little bit more information and be able to provide feedback then. We're also going to meet with the task group to really look at our locations in the Delta where we can, where these themes might be best presented. For example, if you're down along a waterway and there's a site that used to be a military installation, but all you see is remnants, that might be a good location to talk about the military history along that walkway or things like that. So it'd be nice to get some ideas together so that from the group, it hopefully will be a fun brainstorming session where we can start pinpointing the locations for these topics. So that's almost everyone has any questions. Same thing with the goals, and we're going to be working on the goals and objectives alongside the other goals and objectives for the heritage area. We don't want to push too far ahead of it. A lot of our goals, interpretive goals, tend to be very similar across different types of plans, but we want to make sure. So we've got like a baseline set of goals, but we want to make sure that they're tied specifically to that the needs are of the Delta. So we'll be able to put them together based on that, the work that the other task groups are doing, and then we can bring it back and then see how we can hone it even further to meet the education development for the Delta. Any questions?
Well, great. Thank you, Katie. Anything else on this item, task group items, before we go to our final agenda item, which are member announcements?
Eric, I have some announcements.
Yeah, go ahead, Jean.
Are we finished with the last agenda item?
Yeah, well, let's move on to member announcements. So the floor is yours.
Oh, okay. I just want to announce that the Asian American Heritage Park in Ileton has been funded. We're working through the contract now through December. The project should be breaking ground probably sometime in February if the weather agrees with us and everything falls into place. So the park will honor the Japanese and the Chinese who once occupied Ileton, and it's going to be a great park. The second announcement is that we just completed the restoration of the Quan Wo Sing building, which is 23 Main Street. Quanwell Singh is the oldest business in was the oldest business in Ileton, and it was owned by the Toy family. And anyway, the project was completed under the federal tax credit program for historic structures. And we worked with the State Historic Preservation Office and the Department of Interior for this restoration project. I will say it took 5 years, so you have to be patient. And then we'll have a big grand opening in February for this building, and which is now occupied by the Ileton Chamber of Commerce and also the Delta Educational Cultural Society. And once that's open, it will be open to the public on a regular basis. And the last thing I wanted to announce, which is just recent, we have a campground here called Meadows, and that was just sold, and KOA just purchased the campground. So that's going to be a big plus for the Delta.
It was privately operated, Jean?
Yes, before.
Okay. And it's purchased by KOA?
Yes.
Okay. Well, more opportunities for people to pitch a tent or an RV or whatever enables them to stay overnight in the Delta is a good thing. Well, those are great updates. Thanks a lot, Jean. Any questions for Jean? Okay, let's move on to Jan.
I just wanted to announce that Rio Vista is going to be really busy this weekend. The museum is having their annual craft fair, and then the Chamber of Commerce is also going to have one, because I think it's overflow because the chamber or the museum is full. And there's going to be a holiday home tour, a lighted boat parade, and a lighting of our San Joaquin Hospice Christmas tree. So it's going to be a fun, this is all Saturday.
Okay, well, Rio Vista sounds like the place to be on Saturday, so check it out. And I know we're in the season of lighted boat parades too at different Delta marinas, so that's always a fun and festive thing to do as well. David Stewart.
I just want, it reminded me to bring up that the San Joaquin County Historical Museum in Mickey Grove Park, which is between Stockton and Lodi, is having their biggest event of the year after 2 years on hold due to COVID. It's called Festival of Trees. It's a family, you can spend the whole day there event. Yeah, there's the flyer. Thank you, Douglas. And so it does include probably 50 plus decorated trees, but also entertainment in things going on in all of the, whatever it is, 8 or 9 exhibit buildings, and really using the entire 18 acres of the site. All sorts of kids activities, entertainment, exhibits, so fun stuff to do. And it's, like I said, it's their biggest event of the year, and the proceeds go to their education programs. So it's really an event put on by their docent corps, who's a remarkable group. So if you're looking for a fun thing to do this weekend, it's both Saturday and Sunday.
Okay, thank you, David. A little competition for Rio Vista there.
Yeah.
So, Carol.
Thank you. Good, I'm not muted. The East Contra Costa County Historical Society in Knightson will amuse you on Sunday after you've enjoyed yourself on Saturday in Rio Vista. You can come to Knightson for Christmas on the farm. The Historical Society property is the prior male residence, and the whole property is set up for an all-day event from 11 to 5, family fun regarding crafts, Christmas decorations, holiday decorations, entertainment, anything pertinent to the holiday season that culminates with not a turning on the lights on a Christmas tree. Instead, we're turning on the lights on the not the weather vane, but the water, what do you call it? The water vane, the water tower. There's actually a working pump on the property that's wind driven. So 11 to 5 on Sunday in Knightson, and hope to see all of you there. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Carol. I hope everyone heard. It was a little faint on my end, but 11 to 5 on Sunday, you said, or Saturday?
Sunday only.
On Sunday in Knightson. Thank you. Elizabeth. Oh, you're muted.
Benicia will solve the problem with Christmas tree lighting because ours is this Friday at 6. It's on the waterfront, and it's actually right in the historic boundary, so yay. And it includes 6 o'clock gathering with a planted Christmas tree planted a long time ago, right across from the Jack London watering hole, which is gone. The shops offer snacks, goodies, cookies, and libations. And usually there are about 14,000 people there. I seriously doubt there will be that number now because of COVID, but and you probably want to be careful, make sure you mask up if you are concerned. And the Buena, there's a roaming chorus, the Buena, world famous Buena chorus here in Benicia, and they'll be in period costumes for Victorian times. And the Benicia High School band usually plays with them, and then other venues. It's really great fun. It's nice. There's a stage down at the waterfront with music, and I used to, as mayor, I used to sing for the carolers, which might be why everybody went into the shops really fast.
Doubtful, but a good line. Thank you, Elizabeth. Any other announcements from the committee members? Okay, well, I have an announcement, and this might be, some of you might know this if you tuned into our last commission meeting, but I have informed our commissioners that I'm going to be leaving my role as executive director, but not until the middle of 2022, I'm assuming. Our timeline at this point is that the commission will be considering candidates for my successor at an April 2022 commission meeting. They conduct those interviews in closed session, as you can imagine. So the first quarter of 2022 will involve recruitment for a new executive director for the commission. And if you know of candidates, or if you yourself might be a candidate, you don't have to be in civil service to have this position. You serve at the pleasure of the commission. They can keep you or not keep you as they deem fit. But you'll start to see in the new year information about this, and please help us find good candidates for the commission to consider. I'll consider that to be my one of my priorities in the early part of 2022. And I'm not really going anywhere. I'm not taking a new role. I plan to be a bit of a super volunteer. So I guess you could call this retirement, although the word sounds a little funny for me. But when all is said and done, I do expect that transition will take place right around the middle of 2022, maybe a little sooner. So by summertime, you'll see me out on a jet ski, tootling around the Delta. So anyway, I wanted to let you know that. If you'd heard it from other venues, I'm sorry you didn't hear it from me directly. I really did want to be able to tell most people directly, but the work will continue. I realize the timing is a little bit off relative to our completing the management plan, but the good news is we've got a great team in place, and whoever comes on board, I think will understand the great work that this committee and that our commission will have done in guiding the management plan to completion. And so I'll be one of those people providing public comment at the start of the meetings after the middle part of the year. So anyway, more to come, but please do think about who might be good candidates to lead the important work of the commission.
Hey, congratulations, Eric.
Yeah, well, thank you. Appreciate that, Matt. And Mike Campbell has his hand up.
Yes, congratulations on your retirement, and we have room for you on our schoolhouse board.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of boards that I might be.
Strike while the iron's hot, Mike. I like it.
Anyway, there's plenty of good work to do, so we'll have our chances to say goodbye. But I did want you to hear that from me directly if you hadn't already divined it. Some people look at our agendas for our meetings and sense that something was up. So anyway, and maybe with that, I can ask Blake if he can say a little bit more about the work of this committee as we head into 2022, because 2022 is where it's all going to come together for the management plan. We do have a intention of completing the draft by the fall of 2022, which will be here before we know it. So Blake, why don't you say a little bit more about that and about what the committee can expect as we head into the early part of next year?
Sure. So I wanted to at least give you a sense of what our schedule is going to be like next year. At this point, this isn't, we have sort of informally put together a schedule for 2022. I'm hoping to firm that up pretty soon. Well, actually, hopefully in the next few days. But at this point, we are planning to really focus on the task groups over the next couple of months in February and March and possibly into, well, sorry, January, February, and possibly into March. And so at least for the time being, we're going to hold off on any meetings of the advisory committee until March. So the date for that is Thursday, March 3rd. And so at least at this point, we don't plan to meet with this committee until then. But because at that point, we're going to be getting a lot of deliverables and a lot of things to review, our plan is probably to meet monthly. So the first Thursday of every month between March and July. So I'll be sending out those specific dates. So hopefully by July, we should have something that we can recommend to the commission. And then probably having a last, perhaps a last meeting of the committee in September. So at this point, we're trying to, we'd rather give you more dates than not enough. So I would just plan that we would be meeting every month between March and July, unless you hear anything differently from us. And then that last meeting in September. One thing to bear in mind is that in terms of Zoom and in terms of virtual meetings, it's a little unclear what will be happening. And so at this point, we'll just have to see how it goes in terms of whether we'll be meeting virtually or in person. Does anybody have any questions about that?
Blake, if I can just append on to that, I think
Sure.
the strong hope is that there's flexibility to meet in whatever way is deemed best. And for all the shortcomings of the Zoom format, it has been a great way to get our consultant team directly involved in these committees, because they're not going to fly out every time we have one of these. And I think for many of you, it maybe has also proved beneficial, just so we're not hauling you from one end of the Delta to the other. And that will always be the case, regardless of where we hold the meetings. So we operate under what the commission operates, and by extension, the work of this advisory committee operates on what's called the Bagley-Keene Act, which is similar to the Brown Act, but it applies to state agencies. And we only have authority to have these remote-based meetings through the end of January 2022, even as local agencies that operate under the Brown Act for their public meeting laws are allowed to continue with these type of meetings into 2024 or even later. So I do expect that the governor, if not the legislature through legislative action, then the governor will issue some type of an executive order that will extend our ability to have these meetings. I think a question for all of you is, especially as we get into the real heavy duty work on this in the spring and heading into the summer, is whether this is your preferred way to meet or whether you have a real strong desire to gather together in a room. And part of it is just seeing where we go with this continuing crazy path that we're on with the pandemic. But you don't have to answer that question now, but start thinking about it, because my hope is that we'll continue to have that flexibility in terms of how we meet. I'm sure that we will. I have a hard time imagining how we won't, but it's something that we will need to confront as we get into late January and then beyond. Is there anything else you wanted to add, Blake?
No, I will be sending out those dates in the email, the follow-up email I hopefully send out tomorrow.
Great.
Can I ask a quick question about the potential meeting regime?
Yeah.
Do you have to meet in a specific place when we get back under Bagley-Keene, or is it simply that the meeting is public and advertised?
I think, Matt, good question. I think it has more to do with how you post for people who are participating remotely.
Right.
If more than a few people do it, it's a bit of a hassle. And so it's great to have this ability to do it without, you all having to post an agenda on your door or your window of your home, which is how you were supposed to have done it before we went into the emergency orders under the pandemic. So it probably can be done, but if you're doing it right, and of course we always encourage that it be done right, then it'll just be a bit of a hassle for you all to let us know if you are participating remotely and where that's from. And technically you have to invite anyone who wants to come to the meeting into wherever you're joining the meeting from, which to me sounds completely bonkers, but
yeah,
especially if you're meeting in your home. But so it's complicated, as they say.
Well, I was thinking that, it's worse for somebody like Carb, where I've got to go to LA or all over the place, but at least we're kind of geographically in a region. And so what I was wondering is also if there's a DPC location where you would normally have had this meeting, that's the only authorized spot, or if we couldn't use these meetings to visit our fellows regions for intermittent meetings.
Yeah, that's certainly a possibility, Matt. And we'll inconvenience someone wherever we conduct the meeting, because we've got members spanning not only the Delta but into the Carquinez Strait as well. So regardless of where you have a meeting, it'll be great for some and an inconvenience for others. But we'll do it, and we'll strive to select locations that are as centrally located as possible, if that's the wish of the group and if we have that ability to do it. So first things first, we'll see if we have the ability. I'm pretty sure that we'll continue to have the ability to do this type of a remote meeting, and then it's just whatever the will of the group is.
Cool. Yeah, I can see a lot of
that Benicia is a reverse commute for almost everybody.
Everyone's going to lobby for their own location now, but that's a good point, Elizabeth. Thank you.
And then Vallejo has a fabulous meeting place on Mare Island.
Yes, it does. I was just thinking there would be a cool way to tie the meetings to some of the themes that we're interpreting, right? Different locations have different stories to tell.
Yeah, I vote for Oakley and the meeting place there at Big Break.
Yeah, that's always a great location.
Kayaks.
There's no traffic in Knightson at all.
I'm sorry, Carol?
There's no traffic in Knightson.
There's no traffic in Knightson. That's true. Just be careful of the train when it comes through town.
But you
Okay,
gotta
well,
get to Knightson.
okay, well, more to come on that, but something for you all to keep in mind. And so, although the thought of everyone together in one room is just a wonderful thought, I would love to see that happen at some point. I'm sure it will. Although the convenience of this is hard to beat, so. And as I said at the meeting, you know, the one thing I learned in COVID is, you know, with these Zoom squares, you could be business on your torso and no one knows what's covering the rest of your body. So that won't be true if we meet in person. We do expect full clothing. So having said that, I've got pants on. So
I was gonna say, do we need to make you stand up?
no, I did some meetings in long sleeve shirt and shorts during the summer. I'll admit that, and pajama bottoms once or twice. So
As long as I don't have to wear shoes, I'm happy.
okay, there you go. All right. Well, is there anything else for member announcements or anything for the good of the group before we call it a wrap for the day? Okay, well, thank you. The sun's just going down out here in California, Augie and Carolyn. I know it's been down for hours where you are. Thank you for joining us into the evening. And thanks everyone else for your participation. And we will see you here soon.
Thank you.
Good to see you. Be safe, everybody.
Oh,
And happy
Katie.
holidays.
Yeah, and Katie, with this information Katie put in the chat, we'll follow up. Blake, if you've linked it, you can just pay attention to that before you close out the meeting. Or Katie, get it to Blake and we'll get it out to the group.
Yes.
I've saved the chat, so
Okay,
we're good.
great.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. And I think a lot of you guys represent organizations, so please fill the survey out.
Yeah, look for the email because as soon as you close out of the meeting, the chat will be gone for you, but Blake will get it out to you. Okay, take care, y'all.
Happy holidays.
Happy holidays.